Right then, come on. Good boy. This way, come on. Good boy. Hello, welcome to an Easter gardener's world. And it's that first moment in the year for many people when you can get outside and really appreciate the garden as something to offer you delight rather than a series of jobs that need to be done. And the cottage garden here at Longmeadow is beginning to be delightful. It's just starting to show its colours, but those colours are very much geared towards pastels, obviously pinks, and then lilacs and mauves. And, when I can get it, my favourite colour of all in the garden, which is apricot. Now, there are very, very few flowers that are naturally apricot. They tend to be bred from a combination of pink and orange. Sometimes you have too much pink, sometimes too much orange, and occasionally they just hit the sweet spot, but then another one of the same variety doesn't. It's my obsession. But it is good fun working on a colour theme. And what I have here is a geum. This is Geum Mai Tai. It's from the cocktail series. It's not true apricot, but it's touched with it. It's got a base of a soft yellow and then flushed with a very orangey pink. The cocktail series are particularly low, so great for the front of a border or in a pot, but they flower from, depending where you are, mid-April right the way through till June, and if you keep deadheading, they will keep on flowering. That one has got flowers on it. When you're buying a plant from a garden centre, tend to those that don't have flowers on it, because it's used up the energy of the plant to produce flowers, and you want that energy going into your garden. So check out the flowers, make sure it's the colour you want, and then choose plants that are not yet flowering. Okay, we can get one in here, and I think another over here. Right, that'll do for this bit. Now, the foxgloves. I want to plant those now because they're bare root. And if you're moving plants in the garden, move them quickly. The quicker you move them, the less they'll mind being moved. I've got here some foxgloves called Apricot Delight. Never grown it before. I've grown from seed. They look as though they could be wonderful. And foxgloves are either a biennial or a short-lived perennial. And what that means is they will not flower in their first year. They flower in their second year. And some won't flower again. They'll set seed and die back. Quite a few will reappear the next year, maybe even as many as 4 years. But by and large, their best performance is in the year after sowing. Right, I'm going to get this in the ground and leave them in the ground. It's brilliant planting weather. Over Easter is a really good time, perfect for herbaceous perennials or biennials, or even annuals for that matter. Get them in the ground, because the sooner the roots can get in, the better they're going to cope with summer heat. And this relates to geums in particular, because geums are a plant that really don't like to be dry. They do their best in moisture-retentive ground. So that's not a bog, they're not a water plant, but they're not good in very light sand or pure chalk or anything like that. They really like a soil that can retain moisture. And of course, you can always improve the water retention of your soil by adding organic matter. Now, Ashley went down to Leonard's Lee Garden in West Sussex to celebrate spring by looking at it in detail.
For me, early spring carries a quiet magic. The natural world is awakening, and there's a thrilling sense of possibility in the air. Colour is returning, buds are swelling, and plant life unfolds a little more each day.
The garden may seem calm, but that stillness can be deceptive. There's a world of excitement waiting if you just slow down and look closely.
Magnolias are the real stars of early spring. While most trees wait for their leaves to appear before flowering, with magnolias, the flowers come first.
I've just noticed this. This is Magnolia Leonard Messel, and it's a really delicate form of magnolia. There's so many different varieties. What I love about this one is it's got this two-tone colour to the petals. The outside, a lot more of a pastel pink, and the inside, this lovely pale pink. So when you're looking at it from different angles, you get those different colours. When you look really closely at the buds, you can see they're really fuzzy. They're almost like little rabbit feet. And this fur actually protects them from cold weather, meaning that they can flower earlier in the year. Magnolia flowers are monoecious, and this means that both male and female reproductive organs are on the same plant. Magnolias evolved nearly 100 million years ago when bees didn't exist and dinosaurs still roamed the earth. So they relied on beetles to pollinate them. So lots of magnolias have robust anthers and stigmas to support these large insects. And you can see this in some of these flowers here. They're almost like plastic, they're so tough. Once you start to notice the little details like these buds, you realize that the garden is full of the promise of spring. Wow. This is Katsura tree, or Cercidophyllum japonicum, also sometimes called the toffee apple tree, because it has this really sugary scent when the leaves drop in autumn. But I've never noticed the flowers before, and they're like little flames or tentacles. These are the male flowers of this tree. There's such a small window of opportunity to see this, so I feel really lucky to be here just at the right time.
This area of the garden is famous for its rhododendrons, many of which are hybrids that were bred here more than a century ago.
And this one is just starting to show its full colour. But if you look closely, you can see the different stages we're at now. So you've got the closed bud here, and you can tell it's a flower bud because it's really fat and juicy. And it also has these really beautiful scales. Some rhododendron buds have a sticky resin, and this helps to protect it from insect attack and also from any wet weather. On this one, you can see the flower petals just emerging, and this is beautiful in its own right. They look like little tongues to me. And then these ones are in full colour now, and that just shows how you've got these stages, this progression of flowering on this plant. This is a great example of layering in the garden. You've got your large shrubs and trees like this pyrus above me, and it's been crown lifted, so it opens up opportunity for planting underneath. So you have your second layer of smaller shrubs and herbaceous plants like these beautiful hellebores, which are in full flower now. So it provides that early season colour and interest. And then you've got ground cover like this pachysandra here, which provides a lovely foliage for the forest floor. And this is something you can apply to any garden. It doesn't matter what size you've got. You could even do it in a container. So you could have a large shrub with smaller filler plants like hellebores, and then something that trails like vinca. It's a great way to make the most of your space. And it also means that when these early flowering plants are finished, you still have all that texture to see throughout the year.
Some shrubs really come into their own in early spring, when colour and fragrance can still be a little thin on the ground.
One of my favourites is this. It's Edgeworthia chrysantha grandiflora, and it has these amazing ball-shaped flowers. The flowers also appear before the leaves, so it means that they really stand out, and it packs such a powerful scent. And this acts as a signal. Insects are waking up from hibernation this time of year. So by putting this scent out there, it says, I'm open for business. Come and get some nectar. Planting nectar-rich plants doesn't just give you a beautiful garden, but it also gives wildlife a head start. Over here, we have Coriolepis pauciflora, and it has these delicate pendant-like yellow flowers which look like little lanterns. The great thing about this is you could have it in a small garden. It stays compact and it has this really nice arching habit to it. If you want to prune your spring flowering shrubs, the best time to do it is straight after they finish flowering, because they soon start to produce the growth that will have next year's flowers on.
Once you tune into the season, the signs of spring are everywhere.
I've just spotted this, and it's a emerging leaf bud. And I can tell this because they are very narrow, and you can just make out the little fingers of the emerging leaves. And this one has emerged a bit more, and you can see this beautiful pink hue that it has. It's a type of chestnut, and it will also flower later in the year. But now we can appreciate the foliage. Spotting signs like these is a great way to read your garden, and it gives you an idea of things to come. These lakes are stunningly beautiful, and in these cooler temperatures, the surface of the water is calmer, and it creates this mirrored effect. I can see the trees reflected in the surface, and also the golden hues of the daffodils in the distance. It's something you could even try at home. You don't need a massive lake. You could have your own container with water in it to reflect angles from your garden. It's a great way to add a sense of serene calm into your space. The soundscape is a huge part of spring for me, and if you listen closely, it tells a story. The garden is waking up again, and we too are part of that quiet renewal. Simply spending time outdoors and noticing those small changes can be surprisingly restorative. Spring is such a short season, but that's what makes it so special. It's a reminder to slow down, notice the changes, and really savor the season, because before you know it, it's past.
The thing that I love about spring more than any other season is that it has shifts and changes over at least 2, if not 3 months. So there's an awful lot going on. And one of the things at the moment on the mound that really appeals to me is this. It's a forsythia. Now, forsythia is as common as muck. I mean, there must be hundreds of thousands, if not millions of them around the country. But this particular one is a bit more unusual. It's Forsythia suspensa Nymans. And I've chosen it because it's got this pale yellow and this quite loose structure and form, and works perfectly with the daffodils that we have here on the mound. Now, this combination will only last a week at the most, and then it'll move on and other things will take their place. And I think that's the joy of spring.
Okay.
Come on. I've added a bit of compost to this raised bed because I'm about to plant up a bed for cut flowers, and I'm adding in some ranunculus asiaticus, or sometimes called the Persian buttercup. But unlike the buttercups you see in fields with their sort of open, simple petals, these have a mass of petals that form a kind of globe. These will flower, hopefully, from about the end of May into June, planted in December, and then kept in the greenhouse and gradually hardened off. Or you could plant the tubers now, and they would flower later in summer. I'm going to space these out about 6 inches apart. And the thing about cut flowers is that you can plant them closer together than you otherwise would in a border. There are two reasons for that. One, they're not going to be there for as long. And two, you want the stems to grow tall. You almost want to force them up so you get decent stemling. Choose a spot that's relatively shady and soil that is well drained but enriched. The thing to remember when you're growing ranunculus is that they're half hardy. So if you live in a very sheltered area that hardly ever gets frost, and if it does, it's just a touch of it, they may well overwinter, and they're a perennial, and they will come back. But anywhere that reliably gets 2 or 3 degrees of frost or more, they're very unlikely to survive that. So treat them as annuals. I will need to water these in. It's really important at this time of year. Water everything you plant thoroughly. I will also have to have a bit of fleece handy for the next month, just in case we get some late frosts, which we can do here. And a bit of fleece covering them overnight should be enough. So that bed is sorted. The 2 back beds have got tulips in them, and these are tulips that I'm trialing. And the ones I like, and maybe only 1 or 2, I will then order more next year, and they can graduate to the garden proper. Now this bed, last autumn, I sowed with hardy annuals, particularly Ami majus and Ami visnaga, and a bit of wild carrot. However, we had a really cold snap for a few days in November, followed by one of the wettest winters ever, and I'm afraid that did for them, because if that wasn't enough, we've had a mass of rabbits this winter, and rabbits love Ami more than anything else. So we lost a lot. Doesn't matter. I've now got a free bed, and I want to use it for cut flowers again, and I'm going to sow scabious. I love scabious. It makes a brilliant cut flower, makes a brilliant border flower, and I love the dark colours. Now, I've got a variety here called Black Knight, which is really deep, rich burgundy, speckled with white. Put them into your hand. Probably best not to do this on a windy day. And just sprinkle thinly. I'll show you a tip for sowing any kind of seed outside in the garden that I was shown when I was a boy, and it works. Draw a drill with your hand and sow your seeds, and then just simply put your thumb and your fingers either side of the drill and run down either side of it like that. And it pushes the soil up over the seeds, works a treat. Now, I grow cut flowers in these few special beds, and they're brilliant for the house. However, you don't need special beds. Just to pick a small bunch of flowers from your garden is an utter joy. But for some people, it's more than a joy. It becomes transformative. It changes their lives. And I think that's absolutely the case for Hattie Colvin. And we went to visit her at her home in Carmarthenshire.
Flowers are a passion of mine, and I think the more I grow, the more obsessed I become. I don't think I'll ever have enough. Just seeing something go from nothing through to a huge display of wondrous colour, I think is just something really special. My name's Hattie, and this is my flower farm in Clondilo, Wales. I'm unapologetically in love with flowers. I could not be without dahlias. So this flower is one of my favourites. I can never pick an actual favourite. It's called Dunaj or Dunay, depending on how you pronounce it. It's a pom-pom variety. I love the kind of intensity of the pink colour on the very small sort of ball-shaped form and the incredible formation of petals. The pom-pom shape is better for cutting because they tend to have a bit of a longer vase life cut at the right stage. You cut before the centre opens and then it'll last a lot longer. This one is Preference. Preference is incredibly prolific. It does need quite a lot of food and nutrition, mostly because it produces so many flowers. It just gets a bit tired by the end of the season if you don't keep it topped up. So our soil here is very clay. So I spend a lot of time making sure that the soil is looked after. I use lots of different types of farmyard manure to mulch the beds. Every time I plant, I make sure that I replenish some of the goodness back into the soil. When I start seedlings, I use a seaweed feed as well when they're in their trays, again, just to make sure that they have a really great start to life. And I find that keeping the plants as healthy as they can possibly be means that they're more resistant to pests. I used to live and work in London as an accountant. I did get a lot of joy out of what I did, but it wasn't for me. My partner was in Wales, and I felt very much the pull towards being here in somewhere that was back to nature and slower paced. I was commuting back and forwards to London, so had a lot of thinking time in the car. I had a few dahlias. I found them just so exciting and loved all the different shapes and the colours and the kind of flounciness. And I decided that I wanted more dahlias. So that kind of formed the idea for, ooh, what if I could grow cut flowers? In 3 years, I've ended up with 27 20-metre beds and polytunnels as well. So yeah, it escalated fairly quickly. You don't need a huge amount of space to get started with a cutting garden. And actually, if you choose carefully what you grow, you could have quite a few vases of flowers throughout the summer to enjoy. So I very quickly learned in my journey of growing that some flowers are much easier to grow than others. One that is generally pretty steadfast is Cosmos. It comes in some really beautiful shades. It's easy to germinate, and then they're fairly indestructible, I find. This is a really good example of a cosmos that's actually been pollinated already by the bees. So you see it's gone quite fuzzy on the inside, and that sadly means that I can't use it as a cut flower because it won't really last and it'll drop its petals. But it does mean that the bees have had a lovely time. Scabious are really lovely at cut flower. They're very generous with how many stems you get. This is called Black Knight, and I did once have somebody ask me if I could give them the flower with the hundreds and thousands on it because it's got the white little sprinkles on the top. You also get these lovely seed heads, which you can either dry or actually use in an arrangement as well. For anybody that's thinking about starting up their own cutting garden, I'd probably recommend snapdragons. I think they're really majestic looking and always have a really amazing scent. A perennial option, I would definitely go for a geum, something like Totally Tangerine, which is lovely, beautiful colour, and it actually keeps flowering from May. Slows down as it gets to later in the summer, but you do still keep getting flowers. And I think, obviously, you'd have to have some dahlias. As a flower grower, you're very much hailed as living the dream and wafting about in the field with a trug and a floaty dress, gathering flowers. One thing that I have definitely learnt is doing this is a tough, tough job. All of the critters want to get to your flowers before you do. The weather wants to destroy things. It is not all glamour. When I'm arranging with flowers, I would tend to find something in the field that does really inspire me to want to show that off. And then everything else kind of gets built around that. I just slowly keep building the bouquet. I want different heights. I've already got some scented pelargonium. This is a lemon basil and some pennycrest thalaspi to add some green, some different textures with different foliages, and also that is a delightful smell. There is definitely a huge sense of pride when you're working with flowers that you've grown yourself and seeing them all kind of come together like little friends and having a little flower party. I'm going to try and add this one in. It's quite nice and upward facing, which this variety isn't normally. This feels like a really, really lovely representation of what's flowering right now in the field. It's all of my favourite colour palettes. It feels like a huge privilege to get to do what I do for a living. I often find it really hard to believe that my slightly random dream that came to me on the motorway is actually now a very beautiful reality.
I think it's really encouraging that there are more and more people like Hattie that are local, that have got a wide variety of really interesting plants, something I would suggest we all support. Now, it's Easter, and traditionally, the main Easter job in the garden was planting potatoes. You get your potatoes in the ground now. First earlies should be ready to harvest around about June, second earlies July, and main crop in the early autumn. This is a variety called Charlotte. It's a second early, and these have chitted. And you can see, look, that's a really good example of a chitted potato. You get this knobbly growth, and it speeds up the growth and therefore the harvest. Now, how you grow them depends on how much space you've got. If you've got plenty of space, if you've got an allotment, it's a brilliant idea to dig a furrow or a trench, put them in the bottom, and then heat the soil back up to make a ridge over them. If you're short of space, or you're growing in raised beds, like I am, it can be easier. All you do is simply make a hole, stick them in. With the chitted shoot at the top, you want to bury it, ideally, its own depth below the ground. I get 3 across here. Give it at least a foot or so. If you're growing them in a raised bed, you can grow them much closer together than you would in rows. Potatoes really respond to feeding. So if you've got any compost or any manure, anything, any soil improver, it's really worth adding to the soil, and that will definitely increase the harvest. Here. No, Ned, come here, look. Put it. Good boy. Rake over to cover them. Hopefully, when I come to harvest them, we shall have a whole mass of new potatoes, and for Ned, a whole mass of new balls to harvest come July. At least, that's what he thinks. Right. I'm going to use this ground because nothing will appear for a few weeks' time. But I'm going to grow a catch crop, and the fastest growing crop to grow at this time of year is radish. And radish will germinate within a week and be ready to harvest within 6 weeks, before they get crowded out by the foliage of potatoes. broadcast over the surface, it just means sprinkle them widely. Try and do it reasonably evenly. Put the rake over them again to lightly cover them. I've got these extra seed potatoes, but I'm not going to waste them because I want to grow some in pots. This is a recycled container. You can see I've drilled holes in the bottom. You need peat-free compost. Put it in the bottom, not right full up. That'll do to start with. What you need is at most 3, and to be honest, 2 would be plenty in there. But the truth is 3 wouldn't give me any bigger harvest. The more you put in, the smaller potatoes you'll get. And that should produce you between about 10 and 20 potatoes. Enough for a couple of meals. A treat. Just cover them up, put a little bit over the top of them. Don't fill it to the top. As the new growth comes, fill on top of it. That means roots will grow from the stems and you'll get more potatoes. Keep it well watered. Make sure it's not sitting in a puddle, so maybe lift it a little bit off the ground. And if you can give it a little bit of shelter, they'll grow even better. And this is a perfect way to grow potatoes if you're very short of space. The beauty of this, of course, is that you can grow potatoes, whether you want them as a treat or just because you like spuds, even if you've got very limited space. Now, we went to see Tom Stimpson. I don't know if he grows potatoes, but I do know that everything else he grows is in pots.
When you get home from work, it's quite nice to unwind out in the garden, surrounded by nature and beautiful flowers. Just perfect. Hi, I'm Tom, and this is my small town garden in Ely in Cambridgeshire, and it's all about pots. I think very often there's a misconception that if you have a small space, you should have just small pots, and that's not true. It's amazing how many pots you can fit into a relatively tiny space. One of my favourite things to do is build up displays of pots on tabletops. And I've got 4 or 5 tabletops that I sort of rotate and use in different areas of the garden at different times of the year. So I do that by looking at the size of the pots, the shapes of them, so some taller terracotta, some squat ones, and then some little tiny ones as well to slot in amongst the bigger ones, because that means you can create great floral displays and a little bit of structure and drama. This is Muscari armeniacum, which is a Muscari I grow every single year. It's super reliable, easy to grow, and I love the intensity of the blue colour. They require minimal water. Bulbs, on the whole, tend to prefer it to be on the dry side, so planted it in the autumn into really free-draining compost. Once we get into February, green shoots start to appear, and then with a little bit of sunshine, once we get into March, an eruption of blue. One of the ways to keep your pots of Muscari flowering longer is to deadhead. And it's really important not just to pinch here, but to pinch right down at the base. Remove the stem, just discard it. And you'll find that will encourage all the flower buds to keep coming and for it to flower for a longer period of time. So growing in pots is really straightforward. So it all starts with what's at the bottom of the pot first. So to make sure you've got some crocks, and I then put a small layer of grit just over that. Then it's about the potting medium. So I use a peat-free general purpose potting compost, nothing too fancy, but I'll always add a little bit of grit. So if I'm using it for pots of bulbs, like this one here, I will probably add around 60% compost to 40% grit. And I think that's absolutely key because the importance of drainage for the bulbs is so important, and you'll have much better results if the compost can remain just moist rather than sodden. For other varieties of plants, violas, primulas, I won't add so much grit, probably about just 10%, just to aid that drainage a little bit, but they're much more tolerant to wet conditions. And then as we get into them growing in the spring is when you tend to look at the moisture levels a little bit more closely. And then as things start to grow and start to bud up, I'll then start a twice fortnightly feed with some liquid seaweed, just to give a little bit of goodness back into the compost and support the flowers. So this is Ifian and a variety called Alberto Castillo. I have to say they're one of my new faves. I just love them. They have this wonderful sort of grass-like foliage, and I love the chaos of the stems, really, how they grow in whichever way they choose, really. And I love the fact that they move and sway in the breeze. And one of my absolute favourite things about it is the reverse of the petals have a gorgeous stripe down the reverse of each flower petal. It's important to raise the pot off the table, as otherwise, when it rains, the compost just remains wet. It never drains away totally. There's always a little puddle of water underneath the bottom of the pot. I found over the years one of the best things to use is just tile spacers. So when you place your pot on them, you can't see them, but it just allows a few millimetres of air between the surface of the table and the bottom of the pot, and it just means the water can drain away, and that's the one way I get them through the winter. This is a variety of narcissi called Polar Hunter. Relatively new variety, but rapidly becoming one of my favourite ones to grow. It has the wonderful fruity fragrance, quite unlike any other scented variety of narcissi. And it's a beautiful colour. It starts off a limey cream colour as it opens, and then gradually fades to a creamy white. I very often cut a few stems and just have by the side of my bed because I love waking up to the gorgeous scent in the morning. It's a brilliant one for pots, but to give it a little bit of extra support, I just add a few hazel twigs in. I love doing that because it looks natural. It's absolutely gorgeous.
What do you say to people who don't like daffodils?
They should go and get a life. So as we come into mid-spring, I start to think about what's going in the pots for the summer. And a key variety for me are dahlias. I absolutely love them. They're brilliant for providing colour from midsummer through to the first frost, so great value. The tubers are nice and big, so I'm planting into quite a big pot. If your tubers are a little bit smaller, so they're fresh stock, then I'd probably say plant them in a 3-litre size pot and get them to grow and shoot in there before planting out into a bigger pot or into the border. Peat-free compost, I've added a bit of grit for extra drainage. And it's important with dahlias that the crown sits just above the soil surface. Pots for me are the key element to my gardening life. When you have a small space, and if you love plants, pots are essential to add interest, drama, impact, colour, abundance.
Like Tom, I grow masses of spring bulbs in pots. This time of year, mainly full of narcissi and tulips, and the great thing about them is you have these splashes of colour that you can move around and assemble. And by the way, if you've not seen this daffodil before, it's called Rip Van Winkle, with this great sort of splay of flower, which is a little bit heavy for the stem, so It's not so much drooping as sprawling in an elegant way, and certainly looks fantastic when grown in a pot like this. And it's not just spring bulbs that look good. We've got bay here with rosemary. I've got pots in shady areas with ivy and ferns. Right across the year and right across the garden, there's always a place for pot. Go on. Aha! You got it. You got it. Now, this was where we had soft fruit until this winter, because I've brought into here most of the yew cuttings that I took about 10 years ago. The reason I took the yew cuttings were partly to replace the box that got box blight, and I wanted an evergreen, dense hedge, and partly because yew makes wonderful topiary, and I love topiary. So this gives me the raw material for hedges and topiary, and even clipped shrubs, which I've got in the woodland border. And if you had to buy them, they're really expensive. So to grow your own is saving you a lot of money. It's really interesting and I think good fun. This is a yew cutting I took certainly no more than 10 years ago. But you can see it's got a lovely straight stem. And this lends itself to a standard. A standard is anything that is grown on a bare, clean, straight trunk. It could be a ball, it could be a box, it could be a dancing bear or a kangaroo. To create a standard, the first thing I'm going to do is clean off that trunk. I want it to be a ball on an upright, and I want that to be the bottom of the ball, and that's the top. So the first thing I'm going to do is take this top off. Obviously that doesn't look anything like a globe, but these shoots here, these little ones, as they grow out, then we get the outside, and the harder we clip the final shape, the denser it will be. And it doesn't matter if it's empty on the inside, which it will be, because the light will be stopped. Actually, that's not bad to begin with. So the next stage for that is to put it into a pot or into the ground, give it light, feed it, and encourage it to grow. Yew, along with box and holly, regenerates from old wood. So you can cut it back as hard as you like and it will regrow successfully. Now I've chosen this because it wouldn't be hard to make this into a ball. And you can see, because other plants have been around it, it's even started to grow inwards a bit. So rather than cut it back very hard, I'm going to use shears and clip it. In this case, I don't need to go right back to the old wood because the basic shape is there. Right, you can see that I've put all these into bags. Plants in a bag will keep perfectly well, but for growing things on, they either have to be in the ground or in a pot. You want a pot that's big enough for it to grow into. So something like that, really good drainage holes. Yew is tough. Yew will take light, yew will take shade. It'll grow in almost any soil, although it's happiest in lime. So if you've got chalk or limestone, that's great. But it will not take sitting in damp. It must drain. So this is a very, very gritty mix. So we'll put this in here like that. Take this out. Okay, that's good. There. Now, those roots aren't anchored in the pot, and all those tiny little new roots will break if it moves. So we need to put a cane in there like that, and throughout the rest of this year, this will need watering and feeding weekly. But in order to get really good topiary shape, it does need light. This should create the shape I want in about 3 to 5 years, and it will get better and better. Now, going to one of your gardens. It belongs to the Driscoll family, and they live in Cheshire.
Hi, I'm Owen.
I'm Emily. And I'm Liam. Welcome to our garden in Macclesfield.
It's a relatively small space, maybe 10 by 5 metres, and enclosed by tall fences and rows of terrace housing. With young kids, it was a place to play and have fun. As the kids got older, and I got the bug for gardening, it increasingly became a place for flowers and colour, though it was still a little untidy. We paid attention to making space for wildlife, creating lots of interest for Emily and Leo.
We have a little wildlife pond. It has shallow edges to allow any animals that might fall in to climb out. We have been impressed by the variety of different visitors to our garden. But there was one visitor that we never thought we'd see in our garden, with it being all fenced up and barricaded by rows of houses. Then, one night, we spotted this on our security camera at the front of our house. A hedgehog! Could it get round the back to the garden? Dad made a couple of openings in the fence. One day, this summer, in the middle of the day, we saw this. We didn't know what it was doing. Turns out it was building a nest. There was more than one hedgehog in the nest, which meant hoglets.
We started putting out hedgehog food in a feeding station to keep the cats from eating it. We think they appreciate it.
We hope you enjoyed your visit to our garden too.
However exciting it is to have hedgehogs in the garden, and it is, it's fantastic. Hedgehogs are very much nocturnal animals, so if you see them during the day, and if they're feeding and drinking during the day, it normally is an indication that they are in distress. And last summer we saw a lot of that because it was so hot and dry. So ideally, put out food and water at dusk, and it should be gone by the morning. Okay, at this time of year, we sow a lot of seeds, they germinate, and then the next stage of the process is pricking out. And what I thought I'd do is make it really clear what pricking out is, why you do it, and when you do it. First thing is what it is you take a seedling and you move it on to the next stage. Because if you have a mass of seedlings in a seed tray like this, these are Tithonias, they're all competing for space and nutrition, and they would never develop into good plants. Now, pricking out shouldn't take place until you can see the true leaves. So, when a seed germinates, it produces what's called a seed leaf. And you can see here, this is a tray of cosmos. These very strappy leaves look absolutely nothing like cosmos. They are just to give the plant enough energy for the roots to develop. Once the roots have got established, you then get the next stage, which is a true leaf. And if you look very closely, you can see the true leaves are just beginning to appear. And even when they're tiny, absolutely minute, they look like the parent leaves. You can see it actually better here on this parsley. The difference between the seed leaves, which are here, which basically are strappy and simple, and the true leaf, which looks like a flat leaf parsley, is there. Finally, Tithonia. You've got these spatulate seed leaves and then the pointed parent leaf. And again, it means it's got roots. So these two trays are ready for pricking out and that one is not. So you need something to put them in and you need something to carefully tease them out with. In the past, I've used a penknife, I've used pencil, whatever works. take hold of the seedling by a leaf. Never hold it by the stem. It's very easy to crush it or break it, whereas if you damage the leaf, it can grow another one. There you go. It's got quite a good root system. It's always quite a surprise that they have so many roots. Now, I've prepared individual plugs for this, and I'm just going to pop that in there like that. I'm not going to brutally press it down, and it means that each individual seedling gets a real chance to grow. Now, what I'm pricking them out into is a compost mix that has a little bit more goodness in it than the seed mix. You could just use a peat-free compost on its own. I tend to add some sieved garden compost, a little bit of leaf mould, and some sieved garden soil. Not a lot, no more than about 5% of the mix. But the bacteria and the fungi in that will start interacting with the roots. So when I plant it out into my garden, already there is that symbiosis between the two, and they tend to grow away better. Sometimes, say for example with tomatoes, I prick out into a small pot straight away because they're going to be quite big plants and they grow fast. But there is no perfect way, as long as each individual seedling has room to develop into a nice strong plant. Don't try and rush it. Regard it as something that is part of the process of the life of the plant, and you as almost privileged to be part of that too. And to me, that's the essence of gardening. That's really what gardening is all about. I know a lot of people get confused about pruning hydrangeas. The most common type of hydrangea that you see is Hydrangea macrophylla, with mop heads, the great big round heads, or lace caps, which are more open, with masses of petals, but with always a touch of elegance. Now, this is a lace cap variety called Lanarth White, and will give you a display from late summer into autumn. Now, the first thing is, do not prune off the spent flowers in autumn, because they trap warmer air inside and they just slightly protect the plant, particularly in very early spring, from frost. But now we're coming to April. As soon as you get vigorous new growth, you can prune them back. So at very least, take off the spent flowers from last year. However, it's not a bad idea while you're doing this to take a look and say, okay, am I happy with it? I'm happy with the shape, the size. For example, this here is growing out over the border and I don't really want that, so I'm going to cut it back. Now, when you're pruning this type of hydrangea, go right back in and prune at the base, and that will encourage new shoots to grow. So to remove this, I'm going to go in here. Young wood will be vigorous, healthy, and produce more flowers, but remove no more than a third of the plant, taking the oldest growth when you do. And if you do that every year, it will renew itself over 3 years, so none of them will be more than 4 years old. So that's the first type of hydrangea, but to make life complicated, there's another kind. We'll go and prune those now. Now, having pruned a lace cap, this is a very different type of hydrangea. The first thing you'll notice, there are no flowers on it. The second thing is the growth is very different. It's vigorous, it's upright, you've got different coloured stems, and this is a Hydrangea paniculata. Now, one of the features of Hydrangea paniculata, and there are a number of different varieties, is that all the flowers are produced on growth that has happened this growing year. So, for example, these seemingly new shoots, the sort of burgundy-coloured red ones, are last year's growth. And the woody growth is previous years. I planted this about 10 years ago. Some of this could be 10 years old. So nothing that you see will carry any flowers at all this year. So I'm going to prune this back to a framework, which is pretty much the old growth. Unlike the lace caps and the mop heads, which are fundamentally rounded or flattened, these are conical. They look like a squirty ice cream put into a cone. And also, unlike the lace caps and the mop heads, which are very particular about the pH of the soil, paniculatas will stay white, whatever the soil, and they're very forgiving. So they're great. The new growth will come from these points. They'll grow out here, and we'll have these wonderful ice cream cones of flower from August onwards. Well, that was very simple. Didn't take long, but it's a good job. And here are some good jobs for you this weekend. Everybody loves sunflowers, and they're a great plant to grow with children. Now's a good time to start them. They're big seeds, so can go into a pot rather than the seed tray. I use 2 seeds per pot, simply pressing them into the compost, and then remove the weaker of the 2, which guarantees I have one really healthy plant. They need to be watered and then go somewhere warm to germinate. Easter is a really good time to get out any garden furniture made out of wood and give it a once-over. If it's not painted, consider giving it a coat of linseed oil to protect it. And if it is painted, rub it down, remove any loose or flaking paint, and then give it a fresh coat, and it'll be ready for those long summer evenings. Now is a very good moment to divide herbaceous perennials because they've started to grow and will recover quickly from any movement. I'm going to split this hosta into 2. Lift it out the ground, simply chop it with a spade, replant half, and that gives me another fresh plant to add elsewhere. Good boy. No, come on. Well, I'm afraid that's it for today, but it's Easter. Easter, when we can all get out into the garden, maybe go and visit a lovely garden, see friends, and just this sense of the garden and spring to come and summer to follow opening out in front of us. But for the moment, that's all from Longmeadow, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
bao xua xì lý nuông nó lời toàn đê hùi yo chi tu khua có kê lời mò yo cho có mù trời có gió